Hello, today's Bible study comes from the book of Acts, chapter 24, verses 1 through 13, and it reads as follows. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea with some of the elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, and they brought their charges against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Everywhere and in every way, most excellent Felix, we acknowledge this with profound gratitude. But in order not to weary you further, I would request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect and even tried to desecrate the temple. So we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we are bringing against him. The other Jews joined in the accusation, asserting that these things were true. When the governor motioned to him to speak, Paul replied, I know that for a number of years you have been a judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. You can easily verify that no more than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city, and they cannot prove to you the charges they are now making against me. Amen. So this is when Paul's trial moves in front of Felix, and this is Paul being heard by going up the list as it was told. So Paul is going here, and after 5 days, Ananias the high priest came down with the elders in a certain orator named Tertullus, and they gave evidence to the governor against Paul. And Felix was the governor. The Jewish leadership brought in this lawyer, Tertullus, and he was going to claim their case against Paul. And don't forget, just remember, Paul was being schooled by Gamaliel, so this wasn't a big thing to Paul per se, because Paul's intelligence was there. But they were pleading their case. So they gave evidence to the governor against Paul. And it was all three that were speaking in regards to him. It was Ananias, and when I say all three, the three groups or the three people, Ananias, the elders, and this Tertullus person. And they came before Felix, the governor. And this is how seriously they took this thing about making Paul be guilty. They wanted to convict Paul. They didn't have any reason to before, as we remember, but they wanted to. And Tertullus was this lawyer that could supposedly present this package to them. So they start off and he goes, Most noble Felix. And if you know anything about Felix, he started off as a slave. If you read up on him, he started off as a slave, and through influence and status and everything, he rose up and did some things. But he still had the slave mentality, as they said. If you read back in some of the books that they have out about him. But the main thing here was Tertullus was sitting here, how would you say it, sucking up. He was telling him how great he is, and he starts acknowledging how much he's done. It goes, seeing that through you we enjoy great peace and prosperity is being brought to the nation by your foresight. See, these are terms of endearment and sucking up. He is stroking his ego because He wants to be heard, and he wants them to find favor with what he is saying. And they were just what we would call flattery, if you want to call it that, but he was really sucking up in a bad way. Felix was not what he said. Felix wasn't even close, but excuse me, we'll let that part slide. So when we go down to verses 5 and 6, it says, "For we have found this man a plague, a creator of dissension among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ring leader of the sect of Nazarenes." He even tried to profane the temple, and we seized him and wanted to judge him according to our law. So right away in verse 5, they say, Paul a troublemaker, man. He been doing some crazy stuff. He has been starting riots among the Jews, and they don't just say in that area, they say all over the world. And then they said he's a ringleader of a Nazarene sect. So you gave him as a troublemaker. You had him stirring up riots where he was, and not just there, but you say all over the world. And he is the ringleader of a sect, the Nazarene sect. And then you say he tried to desecrate the temple. So if you're wondering why we seized him, this is why we seized him. So we gonna fluff and stuff. Now, when they called him this plague, they were upset because in their mind Paul was politically doing the wrong thing. And being a sect of the Nazarenes said that he had done something wrong to the temple. He had profaned the temple. But you got to remember that Judea had all kinds of revolutions going on against Rome. They had would-be messiahs back then. But Tertullus was trying to paint a picture to put Paul in these same groups, the same type of people. Paul wasn't that same type of people, but a good lie in front of somebody you just flattered to the max, which was still a lie about what they accomplished, will make that person feel good. But when they called him a ringleader of the sect of Nazarene, this was a reference to Paul being a Nazarene but it was actually, if you remember, even when they called Jesus of Nazareth and they said nothing good comes from Nazareth, well, they were making Paul seem like he was connected to this bad place, this low place. And it was pretty much like calling you dirt. Or if you remember, when it was a slight. You remember Nazareth just had a poor reputation, and he was going to use that to his benefit. Remember, they asked, can anything good come from it? But they got an answer for that too, but we ain't in that right now. So, and then it says he's doing this among all the Jews throughout the world, and this was, you want to say he was saying a good thing about Paul because it's saying his ability to stretch, but what he was truly saying was Paul was doing this throughout the Roman Empire, and he was doing this work no matter what. He was doing these things to stir up things. So this was a lie. It was a lie on Tertullus' part, but that's what he was trying to do. He was lying anyway. And then it says he tried to profane the temple. And this was, in their time, a charge that was detailed, specific. But they had no evidence. And there was no evidence. This was the problem. All these things were fabricated charges, and they were just based on rumor. If you go back to chapter 21, we reading a few days ago, and you look at verses 26 through 29, it tells you Paul wasn't there causing trouble, and Paul had nothing to fear because he hadn't done anything. But, you know, Paul being truthful in this area, he knew that the truth wasn't what they were going to present. They weren't going to tell the truth. They were already bothered with Paul. So Paul knew the truth, and Paul was speaking the truth, but the lawyer, well, he was lying. And he had no other intentions but to lie because, as stated, they couldn't find any evidence. So if we thought of it modern day, he was planting evidence in his speech. So the commander Lysias came by with great violence, took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. By examining him yourself, you may ascertain all these things of which we accuse him. And the Jews also assented, maintaining that these things were so. So it talks about this commander Lysias coming by. But remember, Lysias had rescued Paul, and now you bring him into a lie. You put him into a bad situation. And he regretted that the case had come this far. Because remember, he didn't have anything against Paul. There was no, to this point, to this time, there is no evidence that makes you say, why is Paul here? Right now, all of this is being done through a lie. So he says, by examining him yourself, you may ascertain all these things of which we accuse him. Okay, I ain't got no other evidence. Ain't nobody bringing his evidence, any evidence to go against Paul. I want Paul to get examined by you, and then you will see that Paul is guilty. And who did he want to do it? He wanted Felix to do it. This was bad. And the Jews also assented, maintaining that these things were so. Now, these other accusers, and they were Jewish, that were present, the high priest and the elders, they agreed with the lie. So, you followers of Christ, you agreed with the lie that was set up by this lawyer that didn't have anything to go on because everything that got Paul to there was a lie and illegal, and now we gonna agree with a lie so we can still accuse Paul. But they didn't even have any evidence. So they probably praying the same thing. I hope Paul incriminates himself when Felix cross-examines him and asks him, and Paul tells on himself. So I told you this Paul is a smart man. You know, Luke didn't just acknowledge that Paul was smart for no reason. So Paul is getting ready to talk to them about this case that they got against him, this situation, these lies, these accusations that keep coming up that are false. So then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself, because you may ascertain that it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone, nor inciting the crowd, either in the synagogues or in the city, nor can they prove the things of which they now accuse me. So Paul said, look, bro, I'm happy to speak for myself. Because he said, I know the facts. And I'm innocent. And the case is in my favor because the truth is I'm innocent. You don't even have any evidence to bring forth towards me. And the good thing here is Paul didn't suck up to Felix and try to say, you great Felix who have done this and that and this and that. Paul just told him straight up, hey, I'm good at answering for myself. I'm happy about this situation because I know the facts of the case and they were in my favor. You don't have evidence, and I ain't got to suck up to you because there ain't no reason to. I have done nothing wrong, nor do I believe you deserve that. So then it goes, nor can they prove the things which they accuse me of. Paul tough. And they had no, even though it had been no more than 12 days in this situation, and you could have found as many people as you wanted to. You could have questioned, you could have brought witnesses, all of that. You don't have any. It tells you Paul's accusers gave no witnesses to prove this. And I'm talking about in the temple, inciting the crowd, there was no proof. So Paul is holding his own in his own testimony. And what they are making against me now, there is no proof. Paul is in the truth mode in a situation where the lie is the thing to be in. But the truth is stronger than a lie no matter when it is. And Paul is doing this confidently with knowledge and proof that they have none. And since they don't have anybody that can come before them, why is Paul here in front of Alex? We'll continue with this one tomorrow. Or, I'm sorry, Monday. Amen.